And welcome to the Grill Report with journalist Charles W. Kim and Nicole M. Wells. How you doing, Nicole?
Doing okay, Charlie. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty good. A little disturbed, though. A little disturbed. We have a topic today, and we have a discussion we'd like to have on a citizen of the United Kingdom. His name is Tommy Robinson. You may or may not be familiar with him, but he is going to jail today for 13 months. And what he was doing is he's a journalist and activist over in the UK who was reporting on a case outside of a British courtroom. And police took him away, and within an hour he was sentenced and immediately remanded to 13 months in prison. So who is Tommy Robinson? And why should we care? That's our topic today. Nicole, what can you tell us about this?
Well, basically, I interestingly enough, was keeping up with another topic today. Today, the nation of Ireland went to the polls for a national referendum on repealing their 8th Amendment to the Constitution, which granted the right to life to unborn Irish citizens. So I was keeping tabs on that during the day when I saw that this was trending. And I think that this should give every citizen of the UK, and really the US as well, because I think that in a lot of ways the UK is kind of maybe 10 years ahead of us on a lot of things, should give all of us pause for concern, because, this guy wasn't doing anything that, he was arrested for breach of peace. If by breach of peace you mean he wasn't appeasing the powers that be in not reporting on controversial topics, then, he absolutely should have been arrested. But then again, I don't believe that way. He was live streaming outside of a UK courtroom, basically reporting on a sex crimes trial that really got little play in the English press, according to reports I've read, that people really didn't know this was going on, and he was bringing attention to it. So to arrest someone for live streaming on a public street outside of a courthouse for calling attention to something that I would think every citizen of the UK would want attention called to, it was sex crimes against children, 11, 12, 13-year-old children, girls being gang raped. I would think every parent, every citizen in the UK would want attention called to that. Is just perverse, in my opinion, that he would be arrested for that. There's something definitely disturbingly wrong in the UK.
Well, for people who don't know, Tommy Robinson, and this is according to information we have from Wikipedia, his full name is Stephen Christopher Yaxley. He's also gone by the names of Stephen Christopher Lennon, Andrew McMaster, and Paul Harris. And he's been known as a far-right British activist, and he also was one of the co-founded and served as a spokesman for the English Defence League, the EDL. The EDL is a group that has been known, similar, I guess you might want to, if you want to find something similar in the United States, you might look at Antifa. They have had some incidents, and they have had some protests that have turned violent. Now, Tommy Robinson, the co-founder, left that organization. So he's no longer part of that organization and has instead become more of an independent journalist in covering these things. And what he's mainly focused on was the influx of the Muslim population in Great Britain and the crimes that they have committed on the people. And a couple of these crimes most recently were alleged gang rapes of young women by Muslim defendants, suspects. Now, apparently, there are different rules. I mean, this is England, this is Great Britain, so they do have different rules than the United States does as far as how the access that media has to cover certain things. And the press they don't have a First Amendment over there, which is why we have one here. But there are restrictions to how British journalists are allowed to cover certain cases, and certain cases can have what is in effect a gag order while they are taking place, and the media is under sanction if they report on them. Now, Tommy Robinson, his claim is that he was in front of this courthouse and that he was live streaming, and the information that he was providing in his live stream when police came, swarmed him, and took him into custody and threw him into a van was information that was already in the British press. So he wasn't divulging anything new, exciting, and that might have been under this press restriction or gag order regarding the case. He was citing facts that were already in the public, in the press. Now, the other thing that you really need to know is that the reason apparently for the 13-month jail sentence, that he was immediately taken in front of a judge without representation or anything else and remanded into jail for 13 months, is that he was already out on a suspended sentence for a contempt of court conviction. When was that?
I believe it was last year, but I'm not 100% positive.
Well, he was on a suspended sentence. So apparently, if he had been brought back in front of a judge during that time, because he got 13 months for the contempt of court conviction, and the judge suspended the sentence, with the understanding, it appears, that if he was brought back in front of a judge again, that they would reinstate that sentence. So he was arrested for attempting to breach the peace. He was brought in front of a judge with the suspended sentence already hanging over his head. He was remanded to jail for 13 months with no further, discussion, argument, or word given.
The suspended sentence was last year. I just confirmed that.
So that was last year. Now, the question I have is, I guess it would depend when last year. Are the 13 months up? Are the 13 months up? Now, the other problem is if you listen to friends of Tommy Robinson on YouTube, and these are other journalists and activists, they're concerned about him because of his stand against the Muslims that have come into Britain. That apparently he's already received a number of death threats, and that essentially putting him in jail with a high proportion of Muslim people incarcerated could realistically be a death sentence. Now, again, this is secondhand information because what happened in the court has not come out in the regular mainstream press yet. But the hearsay from people apparently who say they were there was that the judge admonished him and said, well, you knew what you were getting into. So, but I don't know if that would, it sounds kind of heartless, because he's been to jail before, and he has been beaten up by Muslims in jail because of his stance on that refugee and political issue. But if this was indeed a death sentence that this judge gave him, a death sentence for attempting to breach the peace, a death sentence.
That sounds like such a trumped-up charge anyway, attempting to breach the peace. That's something that, over here I would hope would be struck down for being void for vagueness. I mean, that's just so, wishy-washy, subjective nonsense. Basically just trying to find a way to get somebody out of the way. But there's a story out regarding this case from the Independent paper in the UK. So basically they're reporting that Judge Heather Norton handed him a 3 months imprisonment in May of last year, but suspended it for 18 months on the condition he did not commit further offenses.
Yeah, so...
and so she said that this is not about free speech, not about the freedom of the press, nor about legitimate journalism, and not about political correctness. She told him at that time. It is about justice and ensuring that a trial can be carried out justly and fairly. It's about being innocent until proven guilty. It is about preserving the integrity of the jury to continue without people being intimidated or being affected by irresponsible and inaccurate reporting, if that's what it was. So, right from the gate there, she's automatically just discrediting what he's doing and attempting to report on these trials. For these alleged offenses by these Islamic immigrants. So, from my mind, she basically already stacked the deck against him straight from the gate. If you're just standing there and obviously that was said at a different time. It wasn't said hours ago when he was arrested. This was said last year. But if his activities at that time were consistent with what he was doing today, which was live streaming outside of the courthouse, to me, that's innocuous. I mean, that can only benefit your country, to my First Amendment American mind.
Foolish American.
Stupid American, if you ask certain parties overseas. But that depends on which side of the issue you're on. So, thankfully American is how I put it. But it's just disturbing to me that a judge would say something like that. And that she would knowingly, if, the bit about him being basically handed a death sentence is correct, if that is in fact correct, that she would knowingly hand him that. To me, that's disturbing. I mean, there are other ways to accomplish your point. For something such as this, it's not like he was involved in some sort of violent crime where he would need to be locked up away from the rest of society. If she were so concerned with him breaching the peace and causing trouble by reporting on the activities of, the courts in the UK, she could easily have remanded him to the custody of his home, with an ankle monitoring bracelet saying, you are only allowed to go X, Y, and Z, you violate that and then you're in, the brig, essentially. But I just find this a little harsh.
Well, I think there are a lot of people listening to this when you think about breaching the peace, in the United States, that'd be like a misdemeanor thing, it's like spitting in public. It's not a terribly high on the list of priorities cases. It's not murder, it's not rape, it's not armed robbery, burglary, massive white-collar fraud, or something along those lines.
It was attempting to report on rape, or alleged rape.
Yeah. Now, the thing, I guess, is why should we care? Especially those of us who live here in the United States. Why is this important? And why should we care what happens to Tommy Robinson? Well, of course, you go back to 1776. We fought a fairly substantial war to get away from Great Britain and the tyranny of the state. And our founding fathers wisely put down in writing in the Bill of Rights about our freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Because of this situation, because of the restrictions and the tyrannical oppression of the British Crown. That's why we went to war. That's why we got our independence, and that's why we have a Bill of Rights. But if a country like Britain now, modern 2018 Britain, can do this, like Nicole said, in some ways they're like 10 years ahead of us. Is this the road we are going down? 10 years from now, is it going to be where a journalist covering a case outside of a courthouse can be rounded up by the police, taken in front of a judge, and summarily sentenced to jail without trial, without legal representation, without a chance to plead their case? And today they came for Tommy Robinson. And as Nicole tweeted in one of her responses talking about this on Twitter, you know, today they came for Tommy Robinson. I didn't care because I wasn't Tommy Robinson. Well, what about when they come for you?
Yeah, I mean, if you know, there's a line that I like to use, and I take it out of Harry Potter, interestingly enough, but you know, if you put so much as another toe out of line, you know, who knows what the state run amok will do. And today, you know, it's Tommy Robinson, you know, that has stuck his neck out and said, you know, enough. You know, I'm going to document this. I'm going to show everyone what is going on in this country. You know, so today it's Tommy Robinson. Tomorrow it could be you. You know, if you happen to see something, even if you're not a journalist, you know, a lot of the time these days, you can't tell, you know, who a professional journalist is and who a citizen journalist is. You know, everybody has phones that take pictures and record video, record audio. You know, anybody can be a journalist today. Anybody can document what's going on around them. So today it's Tommy Robinson. Tomorrow it could be you that just happens to catch something, you know, in your phone that you think is wrong and that you decide to put up and show the world. You know, and the powers that be just might not think that's okay and might decide you need to disappear.
There are plenty of examples on YouTube where this happens in our country all the time. There are people who go to township council meetings and board of ed meetings who are sitting there and are trying to record it. They turn on the video, whatever, and before you know it, police are coming. Oh, you can't take video inside this public building.
Which is utter nonsense, because you're allowed to take photos, you're allowed to take video during a public meeting. It's a public meeting. You're allowed to.
Or if you happen upon something, you know, outside, and the police are doing something, and you take a video, they come over and tell you can't do that, which actually you can, especially if it's outside and in the public. You can pretty much take video and photos of anything if it is in public view. But they have tried here in the United States. They have done this. They have physically removed people from meetings. They have tried to stop people from taking video or pictures of things that they shouldn't be stopping anybody from doing anything with. So before you kind of write this off as British craziness,
which it rightfully is,
you know, this does happen here, and it's only it's a couple steps.
It's a very slim margin between there and here. It's much slimmer, I think, than people realize. And unless you fight back against it, unless you know your rights, unless you yell from the rooftops what your rights are, and enlist the help of people who also know their rights and who support, freedom of expression. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. These are basic concepts that today don't seem to carry much weight with people. But unless you challenge them, you fight back on it, it's only a very, short amount of time until this comes to our shores as well.
Well, some would say it's already here. You have Milo Yiannopoulos, you have Ben Shapiro, and other members on the right side of the aisle, other conservative commentators.
We have Chadwick Moore, who was thrown out of 3 New York City bars for being a Trump supporter and wearing a MAGA hat.
Yeah, you have Tomi Lahren, who was out for brunch with her family last Sunday afternoon at a rooftop restaurant in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and somebody who disagreed with her ended up throwing water on her, who, by the way, was not charged.
Well, what's even more disturbing about that case is that, you had people who were proud that this woman was assaulted while she was out to brunch with her mother on Mother's Day. You had people that were cheering, that this had happened.
Would they happen to be members of the tolerant left?
Well, it depends on who you're talking about in terms of tolerant. You have to be on the right side in order to be tolerant. You know that, silly.
Otherwise, all bets are off, because, of course, conservatives don't deserve human dignity and the right to be secure in their persons. Only the left or minorities do, apparently.
Well, only protected groups, I think, is fair to say. So, it's definitely not people that espouse conservative views. Everyone's all big to sit there and say that women are a protected class, and, you should feel so oppressed as a woman, and, I am woman, hear me roar. But it's not so much if you're a conservative woman.
I was going to say, unless you're a conservative woman,
yeah, no, it's not so much if you're a conservative woman. Then you are a traitor to your, how do I put this, your gender assigned at birth, I think is how we're saying it these days. I'm not really sure, but basically your gender. I mean, us old school people just
your
say
binary gender.
Your gender. So, yeah, I just find it astonishing that we can't just all come together as women. It has to be either conservative women or, liberal women. It can't just be, good on you for achieving X milestone because you're female. It has to be, you deserve water being thrown on you because you're a conservative female, and you just don't count.
Well, you're disrespecting the shoulders that all the women are standing on of the people in the past, like Margaret Sanger, for example.
Oh my goodness, let's not even go there.
But isn't she
queen?
Yeah, but isn't she one of the pillars for the left of women gaining empowerment over themselves and their bodies and their place in the world?
This isn't a can of worms that probably we shouldn't open because we will get hopelessly off track. But yes, Sanger is a hero in liberal feminazi circles for her commitment to eugenics and reducing the surplus population.
Well, when you say eugenics, I mean, for folks out there who don't know what that is, what exactly is eugenics?
Well, she basically founded Planned Parenthood to...
The Women's Health Organization.
To eliminate, inferior, in quotes, inferior races, such as, blacks, at the time what was known as Orientals, which is Asians, anyone that was deemed inferior at the time, she was hoping to get rid of via this wonderful vehicle known as Planned Parenthood.
The Women's Health Organization, the organization that provides so many health screenings and care for the underprivileged women of America.
Yes, that would be the very one. But like I said...
Because abortions, of course, are only 3% of what they do.
Well, depending on whose statistics you're going by, but like I said, hopelessly off topic. That is an entirely lengthy discussion for another time. But yeah, so back to Tommy Robinson. You know, I don't understand how the people who were enforcing this, you know, remanding him into custody, how they can really sleep at night, kind of knowing that they just took an innocent man off the streets and put him in prison for basically just trying to report on the underbelly of the UK.
Well, apparently they don't have any problem sleeping.
I guess not, because, you know, they seemed all too happy and willing to just, you know, take him away and put him on lockdown.
Well, you see, when you don't have the correct groupthink, when you don't have the correct opinions according to the thought police, and we should mention that Tommy Robinson has been banned from Twitter in the UK.
Was it Twitter or Facebook?
Twitter.
Okay. Because I had heard reports he was banned from Facebook as well.
He might be that as well for hate speech.
Which is utter nonsense as well, because hate speech is just nebulous and subjective as all get out. So I don't really subscribe to hate speech. I think it's a bunch of nonsense, because anything can...
What you're saying right now is hate speech, Nicole.
Well, it's microaggressing and triggering liberals everywhere, I'm sure.
I mean, if I'm offended, it's hate speech.
Do you need your unicorn?
Why would you even mention unicorns? That's disrespectful, because you know unicorns don't exist. Are you saying that I don't exist, Nicole?
Well, if you're a liberal, it might be better off. The way you keep telling, you know, unborn babies that it's better off if they just don't exist. Or if you're a child on life support, you know, it might just be in your best interest to just die and get it over with. You know, that's where we're at as a state of morality in the Western world.
So we're talking about a country that has, in the last month and a half, has taken a journalist covering a trial, live streaming a trial with his phone outside of a courtroom, and we've tossed him in jail for 13 months. We are the same country that took a baby fighting for his life, who the parents wanted to take out of the country to try to save him from a terminal condition, and said, no, you can't do that. And as a matter of fact, not only can you do that, but we're going to stop giving the child hydration and food, and we're not going to help it breathe until it dies. Alfie Evans.
Yeah, it's the same country.
Same country. And Ireland's part of the UK, yes?
To my knowledge, Ireland is still part of the UK, even though at this point the UK is crumbling pretty quickly.
But they're voting today.
Well, they've already voted.
They've already voted by this point, but they were deciding today whether or not to allow abortions, which had been forbidden in Ireland up to this point.
Ireland was interesting in that it was unique, to my knowledge. It was unique in the sense that there was a constitutional amendment that protected the lives of the unborn. It was the 8th Amendment to the Irish Constitution. And today there was a national referendum on whether or not they were going to repeal the 8th or save the 8th. And, you know, I mean, you're talking about life and death of your most vulnerable citizens in a society. You know, so so it was just a very powerful day already, because you had basically Ireland is one of the last developed countries in the world that basically prohibited abortion. It was kind of the last bastion of safe haven for the unborn. And so they were voting on whether or not they were going to remain as such today. So you already had this powerful moment going on across the pond. And then in the midst of that comes Tommy Robinson. So you just had a lot going on today in terms of human rights, you know, and to top it off, you know, the exit polls that were done during the Irish referendum were suggesting that the repeal side won in a landslide. Now, whether or not that's actually the case, we won't be sure until tomorrow, because, as we all know, here in America, landslide victories are to be doubted until the actual votes are in. Exit polls be damned, because, well, just look at 2 years ago. Who's our president?
Hillary Clinton. She had a 98% chance of winning.
Wow. I mean, they even rigged it and she couldn't manage. How'd that happen?
Because of all the misogynist, homophobic, racist.
We don't have time to go through all of her.
Not all of them?
All of her arguments.
But we have all the reasons. Nicole, we have all the reasons.
I'm not listening. We don't have time to go through all of her silly reasons. There's like 99 ways to go through Hillary Clinton.
That's because your brother, father, and your fiance all told you how to think, Nicole. Because you couldn't think for yourself as a woman. And there's a special place in hell for you for not voting for Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Okay, Madeleine Albright, I'm sorry, but I don't vote with my vagina. I actually vote with my brain. I know it's a tough concept, but, you know, it's 2018. Or actually, at the time, it was 2016. So I think we've come a little bit further.
We have breaking news.
And what would said breaking news be?
According to CNN, is reporting right now, and this is May 25th, Irish voters show landslide support for liberalizing abortion laws. Exit polls show. All
right, so it's not really that breaking. We already knew that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that, folks. That's again CNN. They're coming out ahead of the story. The alert that I got. I'll see if I can find it. The alert that I received was that they overwhelmingly voted 2. So I immediately went on my phone and tried to pull that up so we could break the news, I guess, in our podcast here. And what they're saying, though, is the same news that's been out there for about 7 or 8 hours now, and that the exit polls are showing that this is the way the vote might go. Once again, thank you, CNN, for publishing fake news and sending out a fake news alert. Way to go, journalist organization, for your fact-checking.
So, yeah, so as we all know from the 2016 election, exit polling in general is just really not very reliable these days. I'm not really sure what's changed between polls before and polls today, but regardless of the mechanism as to why polling has changed, polling definitely has changed in today's day and age. And I really wouldn't go, until the votes are actually counted and all in, I would not go by exit polls. I would not go by projections, because they were historically epically wrong in 2016. So, you know, I'm amazed that we're still even having exit polls or projections in general, because they've been so wrong lately. So we'll have to see how that comes in, whether or not Ireland chooses to remain the safest place really in the world for a mother and her child to be. So we have to wait and see, because votes are not all in yet. But it was basically a rough day for human rights in the UK, between the Irish abortion referendum and, you know, a citizen activist journalists being locked up for trumped up charges about, breaching the peace, whatever that means. It was a rough day for human rights.
And these are supposed to be in modern society democracies. These things are happening. Think about this for a moment. This is not 1500. This is not communist Russia. These things are happening in Great Britain. Progressive Great Britain.
Well, right there, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Progressive. Anything that the word progressive touches is corrupted. Is turned into a culture of death as opposed to a culture of life. A closed culture as opposed to an open culture.
But it's just funny. These, quote, progressive, unquote, liberal, quote, unquote, policies are supposed to, they keep telling us, they keep selling us, that this is going to bring humanity to a better place, man. Everybody's going to live together in love and harmony. It's going to be wonderful. And what are they doing? They're violating the basic human rights that we all have.
Didn't they say somewhere that the devil is always the greatest salesman?
Exactly.
You wrap it up in slick packaging. You make someone feel like they're really advanced. We've done such a good job. We are so advanced as a society. You pat yourself on the back. You think you're doing right by everyone. But that's how Satan works.
I mean, how advanced, quote unquote, is it to take a metal instrument, put it inside a woman's uterus, and tear out the new life growing inside of her? Rip it out of her. How human is that? If you went to another planet where there was supposedly intelligent life, and you tried to explain what abortion is, they would look at you like we would look at someone from the Dark Ages who thought that by cutting you open and bleeding you and putting leeches on you made you better. That's how crazy. Or going to an alien planet and trying to explain to them that there's a 65 or an infinite number of genders, when their science is going to tell them the same thing that our science tells us at the DNA level. There are two. They're going to look at you and say, what is with you people? You say you're advanced, but you're like the Stone Ages. Stone Ages. You can't even tell, in a binary gender system, you can't even tell what gender you are.
There was a great tweet, and I don't even know who put it out at this point, so forgive me if somebody happens to be listening that knows who put it out, but basically they were saying, this generation wants us to think they're so progressive, they're so advanced, and yet this is the generation that's eating Tide Pods and can't figure out what gender they are.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like you want to be taken seriously and sit at the grown-ups table, but you're eating detergent like a child, and you can't even figure out whether you're a boy or a girl. I mean, that's basic stuff. This is just, I think as a society, we're just really disturbing at this point. We wrap up murder as healthcare. and
As a humane thing to do.
absolutely, it's humane. It's much better off on everyone if you just die because you're an inconvenience.
Well, not even just on everyone. I mean, the British court found that their decision to withhold hydration, breath, and nutrition from Alfie Evans was in the best interest of Alfie Evans.
Well, not just in a case of a child that's outside of the womb, but a child that's inside of the womb.
Well, forget it. Remember Hillary Clinton, they have no rights.
That's wrapping up murder as healthcare is what I was
Well,
referring to.
You can't murder something that doesn't have any rights.
So...
Can you?
Well...
Hillary Clinton said that inside the womb, you have no rights.
Why is anybody still listening to Hillary Clinton? I mean,
because she keeps talking.
No, but I stopped a long time ago. You should too. It's better for everyone's health.
But even when she's not on TV, when she talks, I mean, her voice, that shrill, you hear it. It comes through the cosmos, and it just attacks your brain.
I don't give in to that. I don't waste my time with it. It's just better that way for everyone. You should try it.
She won't let me. She keeps coming. She's like Jason and Freddy. She keeps coming back.
Maybe.
No matter what you do to her, where you put her, or what happens, she keeps coming back.
Well, maybe you just need a new tinfoil hat. That might ward off the waves.
But the force is strong with that one.
This is interesting, shall we say. Go ahead.
No, that was it. That's all I got.
I'm just checking. Okay. You look like you had something else Star Warsian to say, which I'm not even sure how that got brought up. But
tinfoil hat. So how was that getting through? It was through the force, of course.
I see. Well, that's what happens when you discuss things with a Star Wars aficionado. Anyhow, so I'm not really sure where we were now that we got off topic with Star Wars.
Well, no. I mean, we're talking about the basic human rights that people have, that we have enumerated in our Constitution. And the thing is that the world in these, quote, more progressive, unquote, countries are actually regressing on the basic human rights.
Well, not only are they regressing, but I think that a small contingent of people are waking up to the fact that they are regressing. But I think that at this point, it might just be too late.
Well, not only might it be too late, but we're in a very dangerous time for this regression. Because we're in a time also of big data. We're at a time when Big Brother can watch you all over the place all the time with surveillance cameras and GPS and cell phone technology, where they can, most cell phones, if they want to, they can hear you. I hate to tell you this. If you have a microphone or a camera on your device, they're not supposed to, but could that be rigged to pick up the sounds and images? Yep.
Well, actually, it's interesting because we used to watch movies as kind of like an escapism kind of thing. And anymore I find that a lot of the movies that are out there are kind of these dystopian, Orwellian type scenarios, and they're not very far off from where we are.
They're less far off than
they ever were.
Yeah.
And it's really quite scary. One of the ones that I saw recently, and I believe it's a few years old at this point, the movie. It came out in 20-something. I think it was like 2013, 2014. But it's a Nicolas Cage film. It's called The Humanity Bureau. And basically it talks about, I was reminded of it because you were talking about being able to be tracked, and there's all kinds of ways that they can keep tabs on you. And And basically, in this dystopian reality, it's set in the U.S., but it's a U.S., hopefully decades, centuries away from the U.S. we're in now. But it's a reality where you have to basically justify your existence. You have to prove to the Humanity Bureau that you're not a drag on the system, that you're not a burden to anyone else.
There's one of the classic Twilight Zone episodes, which is exactly the same thing with Burgess Meredith and Fritz Weaver.
And basically, Nicolas Cage is like a lower level, newbie kind of agent, just starting out in the Bureau. And he doesn't know what goes on in this reality, and so he doesn't really have a clue what's going on behind the curtains. So he kind of peeks behind the curtain, and so he's horrified and appalled at what he finds, and then he's left with this decision as to what he's going to do with this information. And the whole rest of the movie revolves around, the choice he makes and what he does with the knowledge he's been given about what the government is doing and how they're keeping tabs on everyone and how they're controlling the narrative and the people within the country. It's really... It's a disturbing movie because of the ideas behind it, but it is definitely well worth the watch because it shows you just how extreme things can get if they continue down a certain path. And it's really not that far removed, I think, from where we're at now.
Well, the in a similar vein, the episodes talk about with the Twilight Zone. Burgess Meredith, I forget his name, but Fritz Weaver, they had this tribunal, and they bring Burgess Meredith in front of them. And the accusation against Burgess Meredith's character was, you are obsolete. And Burgess Meredith usually played these characters in the Twilight Zone. He was kind of a man who studied books and literature and the Bible and things. And so what he got to do was, Fritz Weaver and the tribunal allowed him to determine the method and everything of his own death because he was obsolete. And it was to happen in a certain time. So, but he got to control all the details of it. And what he did is he brought Fritz Weaver into him, and of course and it was all televised and everything. So the whole nation could see what was happening. And Fritz Weaver comes to his place, and what Burgess Meredith said, he's going to die in like a half an hour. And he locks the door so Fritz Weaver can't get out. And the whole thing was, he wanted to televise to the nation the strength of the state and, the meaning of the state. And here's a man who's just going to sit there while his death is upon him and read the Bible. And of course, Fritz Weaver, who represents the state, starts out all calm and cool, how strong he is. By the end of the hour, as the minutes come by and it's time for Burgess Meredith's death, which is going to be an explosion, Fritz Weaver, he starts panicking and eventually runs to the door, let me out. And Burgess Meredith's character lets him out before the place blows up to show what humanity is about. But that's kind of where we are, I think. You have these people in these progressive and these state, we're so strong and we're so right, and of course we have all the answers. We're intellectually so superior. But when it comes time to come for you, when the police start rounding you up for the smallest of things and put you away, when they come for your child, to let your child die, even though you don't want that to happen, you're going to be the ones groveling and begging and pounding at the door to get out. And then it's going to be too late. We've got to wake up, America.
Not only just America, but world. You know, this is bigger than America, clearly. You know, all of Western civilization needs to wake up.
It's this progressive march is stomping on the very bedrock foundational principles that made civilization advance to where we are. Have we made plenty of mistakes along the way? Oh yeah. Plenty. The textbooks are full of them.
But there is no advancement without mistake.
But there is no advancement without mistake. But the things that have always kept us, well, the only thing that kept us and empowered us to overtake fascism in the 40s and communism after that in the name of freedom was our belief in the basic bedrock principles. Belief in things like the Ten Commandments. Believing that every human being deserves to be able to say what they want. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to like what they say. Nobody's saying that. But that they all have a right to speak their mind. No matter what that thought is. That we all have the right to life. To the first thing in we have in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that everyone is entitled, endowed by their Creator with the rights to life. Life! Liberty, which means freedom. Freedom. Freedom is meaning not to be controlled. And the pursuit of happiness. That these rights were endowed by a Creator. And the founders of the country, they weren't talking about the state. They were talking about a divine presence. Whether it's, God or Buddha or whoever you worship in, there was a spirituality to it. And the freedom to practice that spirituality. Freedom! Again, it doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but you have a right to live your life. As long as you're not infringing on other people's rights, you have a right to live your life. But now the state is coming in and infringing on everybody's rights. But they're doing it for the right reasons, so it's okay. We should just take it.
There's nothing to see here. Move along.
Nothing to see. Move along. Oh, that fetus in the garbage can? That wasn't a human being, 20 minutes ago. With a beating heart. With a brain. With a spinal cord. With eyes. With nose. With a mouth. With ears. Feet and hands. It wasn't a life that was to be born and have a purpose.
I think Dr. Seuss had it right. In Horton Hears a Who, when he says a person's a person, no matter how small. I think that we've kind of lost that sense of just that common sense, innocence about our thinking. We're so sophisticated, we're so smart, we're so educated, but we're so much so that we've lost the original intent of any of it. And in the sense of Tommy Robinson, just trying to do the right thing, you know, in a corrupt cesspool of a society can get you locked up, you know, silenced, repressed.
Isn't it funny how the people who are so worried about people repressing people are doing the repressing?
Well, you see, that's for everyone's benefit. I mean, nothing good can come of these troublemakers being let loose on the streets.
'Cause I know how to repress, see? That's the state. Now, you heard that joke, right? The husband and wife, they go to the casino, and the husband loses $400, and the wife says, you know, why did you go and lose $400? And the husband says, 'cause I know how to gamble. That's the state. Don't you worry about repression. We'll tell you what repression is, because, boy, do we know how to repress.
It's an interesting accent you've got going on there.
Yeah. Try my best.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it's very telling who the actors are that seek to keep people in darkness. It's very telling, and it's just disturbing that you wouldn't want a light shined on gangs of, as Trump would say, animals.
Oh, wait, we can't say that.
No, I just did.
Too late.
Gangs of animals that, you know, allegedly rape, you know, and abuse.
But according to Nancy Pelosi, they all have that divine spark.
Just stop. That rape and abuse children. You know, I mean, that's the scary part, is that you would think that all of these, you know, these virtue signalers, to use the buzzword of the day, you know, the UK judiciary, which I'm told by elite sources is, you know, the best in the world. You would think that they would want people pointing out the corruption. They would want people highlighting, you know, the injustice being suffered by these children. These are supposedly people that are supposed to be upholding the law of the land and protecting the most vulnerable and the weakest. And the fact that that's not the case is really what's disturbing here.
And on that note, we're reaching the end of our time this week. We want to remind you, please let us know. Message us if you like what we have to say. If you don't like what we have to say, let's hear what you have to say. Get in touch with us. And also, you know, grab we have the Snark is Real, hashtag the Snark is Real t-shirt. It's available through Zazzle. You can pick that up. And also, don't be scared to PayPal me. Send us a tip. Even if it's $1, send us a tip if you like what we do. And we will keep bringing you our take on the latest news and things going on in the country and world.
And that's all we got. So this is Charles W. Kim and Nicole M. Wells signing off, America. Good night.